Thank you very much. Welcome from my side as well. I'm based in Ischgl right now. So I am Evelina. Most of you currently might know me already. Together with probably Nikki, we can share the screen then, the slides, to get into the slides. Together with Nikki, we have shared this co-designed this experience, like we call it. We see it as a learning journey where we are looking into how can mindsets of business companies and of business accelerate actually as well science, and how can we as scientists make use of that and work with that more smoothly. So this is actually a starting point from us. We realized this in collaboration with Exploration Space at the Austrian Academy of Sciences, with the Ars Electronica Research Institute Knowledge for Humanity, in the framework of the project Explority on the one hand, and on the other hand, the GIST ERA project Provide the DH, which is funded by the Austrian Funding Agency, and last but not least, the business therapist with the innovation company IACE. So thank you very much for our funders. And a little bit to my person so that you get a little bit of the background as well. I'm Eveline van der Vogt. I'm an experimenter, not network facilitator and knowledge designer. And that's exactly what I try to do with this learning journey as well. I have a transdisciplinary background, and I'm mainly aiming to apply knowledge, and especially academic knowledge, into applications and make use of it for real world challenges and problem solving. So that means I'm working on the intersection of science, society, and doing this with art and technology. During the last 3 years, I have worked very much in that framework. I have funded Exploration Space on the one hand, which is based on the Austrian Academy of Sciences and which is a movement. I have funded the Ars Electronica Research Institute Knowledge for Humanity, which is a research institute that is exactly based in bridging the gap of academic knowledge on the one hand, and on the other hand, getting into applications and boosting innovation from that side. And I'm very much looking into social innovation, trying to apply my work on the SDGs and making use of it to reach the goals of the Agenda 2030 and work towards a more inclusive and sustainable future. So that's the overall framework. And what we are trying right now with this series of interactions, actually, so we are starting today with an introduction, which is a webinar. Then we are looking into more interaction-based modes in a workshop, so where we are definitely trying to put the workshop that we wanted to have face-to-face into the digital space, and finally stop with an unconference. And the idea definitely is to explore what is relevant of these concepts for science and get a little bit more of the idea, what could exponential science mean and what does it mean for you? So I'm handing over to Nikki again. Nikki will guide us through this process, and I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I'm psyched to be part of this very exciting endeavor to talk about something that I mainly focus on: business and companies and the corporate life. And in conversations that we had together, we realized that there is so much in common that actually science is looking at comparable walls that might be overcome with a little shift of the mindset, with a little change of thinking. Now, as you know us a little better, I would love to get to know a little more about you. Maybe you can just briefly post into the chat if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a scientist, if you are a student, or if you're searching. And I guess whatever you are, searching is probably always a little part of it, which is a matter of curiosity that brought you also here, I guess. So Barbara is a researcher. I'd love to see, to better understand where you guys coming from. Nice. Another researcher and research manager, project manager, or research manager of projects. Hi, Paul. Let's see what we have coming up here. Startup and AI-based mental health. Very interesting. Thank you, Mike. Research assistant, senior academic at Glasgow, cancer scientist, archaeologist by training, or digital heritage researcher, project manager, museum, student. Wonderful, wonderful audience. Interdisciplinary researcher, academic, digital humanities. Hi, David. And by the way, I'm going to share the chat as a document with all of you as well. So you can also look back who was in the room, and whenever there's something you'd like to leave where you feel like you want to share it with the others because you think it resonates with you or it relates to what I'm sharing, that could be also a good depository for that information because everyone will be able to access it. PhD student, freelance consultants. Yeah, I think I'm passionate about community. I'm passionate about people coming together and having questions together and having ideas and thoughts and visions and worries and fears together. So as I said before, this should not be a throw at you stuff, because otherwise Evelyn and me could have recorded it as well, put it on YouTube and shared the link with you, and you can watch it whenever you want to. So trying to understand how we can make this being connected while disconnected more of a connected thing. So I can see that we have actually reached the audience we wanted to reach with this concept, Evelyn, because we're said that we want to talk about exponential science, and we have a lot of people in science in the room. So I'm psyched, I'm happy. Let me start with the first part. Let me start with talking about what this is all about. And you will see a lot of things that I've observed in corporates, in business life, but it actually applies to personal life, to entrepreneurial life, to scientific life. There are so many applications because I think that mindset is basically just the foundation of wherever you want to go. And what I'm sharing with you, I would say is 90% mindset. Because right now we're on this bridge, and that's why I chose that one as an opener. We come from certainty, right? Because everyone's coming from certainty means that you know what you did last summer, basically. You know what's behind us. And we're going to a direction with a lot of uncertainty. That a lot of predictions and ideas and foresights and visions of what might be ahead of us, but to be honest, nobody really knows. And then below us, there is water, and the water level is raising because we have this issue that we understand that there's a lot of technology, but there are also a lot of problems. And it seems to be the case that we need to go to this other side of uncertainty. And the only thing we don't have is time, because the water level is rising and rising. And this is why I think acquiring a mindset of an exponential thinker is crucial to steer whatever organization you're related to their next chapter. And I hope, as I said before, I hope you can resonate. I hope there's something that where you understand or where you agree that it makes sense. And if not, please use the chat. I will always look to the side. So every time you see my head going over there, you will see that, you will know that I'm looking at the chat to also kind of follow this part of the conversation. All right, so where are we coming from? Because it's always helpful when I talk about the bridge and I said we come from certainty, there's also something more that we're coming from, and that's this mindset that I'm looking into to question. And this is a mindset, wherever you look, between a hunter and a prey. A mindset that's driven by the idea that you want to be faster than your competitor, or you want to beat your competitor, or you want to get your competitor out of the race, or a mindset where you want to chase customers and you want to make sure that they buy your products, and you want to make sure that they can't escape from you because you want to be heard wherever they go. You want to have exposure everywhere and at every moment of their lives. So you just make sure that you don't miss out any moment where they would interact with you. And this is also a hunt of attention. I learned recently that the attention span of the millennials, of the Gen Y, was 11 seconds. And right now we're looking at the Gen Zs, and the attention span of the Gen Z is 7 seconds, which is ridiculous. So there's a lot of things happening that are worth questioning. So this is where I think we're heading. We're heading towards a world where everything that we're doing is some sort of related to the question, what am I actually good at? And how can I change? How can I solve a problem for people? How can I understand that everything that I'm doing is service? Everything that I'm doing is privilege. That you came here to spend your evening in Japan, your afternoon in Europe, and your morning if you're in Americas with us, is not because you think that we have something to say. It's because you trust that this might be a valuable, a worthwhile investment from you to be here. So I think that what I'm doing here is a privilege. I have the attention of 15 people all over the world. I don't see this as something that I've earned. I see this as something that is a privilege. So that's already kind of a first way of behavior change, a first way of approaching people in a different way. However, I would like to start with making a difference or explaining the difference between linear and exponential organizations. Before I do this, Evelyn introduced herself and I just kept on talking and reading. I'm a 1972 guy. I was in advertising for many years. That was an exciting industry because it was an industry where you worked with the CEO, you worked with the owner, you worked with the top management, because it was on their agenda, how their company, how their products are exposed to the public. That has changed over time. I think advertising has become more of a self-complacent industry, but that's a different story. In 2006, I stumbled across TED and I started watching TED Talks every day until in 2009, I decided to attend my first TED conference, TED Global in Oxford. And this is where the TEDx program has been introduced. And please just write in the chat if you don't know what TED is, then I can explain it personally, or if there are many people, I can explain it in front of all of you. It's a global network of conference curators of conferences. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. And TED also brought me to San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, where I got introduced to Singularity University, which is basically not really a university, but they found that if we understand exponentially growing technology and if we understand exponentially growing problems, we have to bring them together. So we want to help people understand moonshot thinking, because most of the time it's not technology that's in our way, it's our own mindset that's in our way of big thinking. So we believe we're too small to do something, we're not connected enough to do something, we're not intelligent enough to do something. So we have all these mental barriers to move on, and Singularity University is very good at helping you understand that there's nothing wrong with thinking in, I want to change the life of 1 billion people in the next 10 years. I got excited about being in San Francisco. I founded Silicon Valley Inspiration Tours and later the Global Inspiration Tours, which is a program of curated conversations. 10 people, small groups, 5 meetings per day. It's a 1-hour conversation with, I think, are the smartest people in Silicon Valley, or the most interesting people to have a conversation with, in an industry that relates to my participants. So it's not Zoo visits to Apple or Facebook or Google or Tesla. It's literally hard work of up to 16 hours on a day together, exploring who we should meet, who we should have a conversation with, how we can spend the day in a most efficient way, that on a Friday when we fly back home, our life should be different than it was before we embarked the program on Monday. As it is complicated, and as you can see, it takes more than 5 minutes to explain what I'm doing, I recently asked a friend how he would put this all together. And he is a very inspiring speaker and also a futurist and foresight thinker, and also highly entertaining. And he said, "Hey, Nikki, you are the business therapist." So I didn't give myself this name. I was given that name, and I can warmly resonate with it because I'm passionate about helping you guys understand where you could go and where elements that work for others might work for you. So you allow yourself into a new version of yourself. And if I'm successful with this, that's my sweet spot. That I have hit home. This is what I'm really, really burning for. Enough about me. Let's look into the the linear organization, and then later to the exponential organization. I'm going to share a few cases with you of linear organizations. Nokia is a very classical linear organization, or was. We'll see. I mean, where they're trying to go back to the market right now is with feature phones. Like they want to catch up where they lost, or before they lost. However, when they were done, they had 30 different phones for their 30 different situations or lifestyle or whatever. And it's a nice proof how companies think today in a linear mindset. They start with a product, they advertise the product, they want to grow the product, they see success. And then there is a drop. After success, there is a drop. We've all seen the S-shaped curve, although the form of the S-shaped curve has changed a little. It goes high up, and then there is a peak, and then it drops significantly. And during this drop, they want to improve the product. So they figure out what does the market need to reuse or start using this product again, and then they add features. And with these features, they have a new message. So there is a little up the hill for the same concept and product again. But of course, it goes the same way to the top, and then it drops again. And they try to do the same over and over. And what happens is that they have too many products for people. They have too many features in their product. Everything gets too complicated. And we call this death cycle of a product. So that's what happened to Nokia. Another very interesting industry is the automotive industry. I don't know if any one of you is related to the automotive industry, which is an industry, of course, from the nature of the car, driven by mechanics. And there are 111 car brands in the world, of which 110 are trying to be better than one. And they claim that, to speak it out, Tesla is not even producing good cars, and they are right. Tesla hasn't even have the main intention to produce good cars. They don't have the intention to produce bad cars, of course, but they don't talk so much about suspension and interior design and engine and all this stuff because no one really cares. Because if you understand what cars are actually built for and what cars are really good at, you understand that cars are really good at staying in motion. So future car brands will be successful if they make sure that they build everything around that device on the street that takes maximum advantage of something that's good in staying in motion. We will see petrol stations disappearing. We will see garages, parking houses disappearing. All of these make cars stop. Cars shouldn't stop. And if it's about staying in motion, you will also learn two things. One is, while my car is in motion or my device on the street is in motion, it might not necessarily have to have someone or something inside, a person or a good. It might be that it's already good enough to have a lot of sensors to mine information, to mine air quality, to mine weather information, to mine street condition, to mine seismographic activity, whatever it is. This information will be valuable, and probably the car company or the data company that produce these devices will have more money from the information they deliver than from transporting people or transporting goods. So if I am a company like Volkswagen, there's one thing that I'm really good at today compared to a company like Tesla. If we think in devices on the streets, and that's, I have a lot more devices on the streets than you guys from Silicon Valley. Volkswagen has probably most of the devices. Most of the cars in the world are Volkswagen related cars. So if I were there, I wouldn't think about pulling them back and thinking about diesel engine, electric engine, hydrogen engine, or what. I would think about, how can I put sensors into all these devices that I already have? Once they're back on the street, they produce information for others are willing to pay a lot for. But these companies, they don't have the mindset of a data company. They don't have the mindset of a mechanic. So they never think about their cars as being a device on the street, being able to mine information. Another good example of linear organizations are all the industry, all the companies related to fintech and insurtech. Insurance companies might have tons of products for tons of different products, but customers, but that's not what customers are waiting for. I don't want to be, it doesn't make a difference if you have 3 products for 3 categories of customers or 3,000 products for 3,000 categories of customers. The only difference is it's way more complicated for customers to understand which is the right product. And they don't want to understand which one is the right product for me. They want to pay when they want to pay insurance while they are a risk. And if they're not a risk for the insurance company, why do I have to pay for it? And it doesn't mean that you have to expand your customer portfolio. It means that you have to understand what people really want and what people really need and what problems people have, so you're there to solve it for them. there is no linear versus exponential organization company presentation without the Kodak case, which of course has been like the #1 famous case of exponential organization. And a lot of people I talk to say Kodak didn't understand digital. Well, now more and more people know about it. In 1975, a guy called Steven Sassoon invented the digital camera. He was a Kodak employee. But Kodak said, hey, we print memories on paper. We're not a digital company. What we do is we produce films. People have their cameras. They put the cameras in the films, the films in the cameras, expose photos, and have wonderful pictures. Nice, I'm admitting another attendee. But what Kodak didn't think in so Kodak didn't understand digital. They didn't understand the change of technology. What they did not understand was the power and the world of an exponential organization. Because if you take the claim, we print memories on paper, as what Kodak stands for, what Kodak does for people, the problem that Kodak is solving, the pleasure Kodak is gaining, the discomfort it's removing, whatever it is, it's all about reprint memories on paper, which is a good thing because we want to capture memories. We're still capture memories. There are gazillions of business models around capturing memories right now today. What Kodak didn't see is that in 2017, we're going to shoot 15 trillion photos, actually 14.6 trillion photos. And if we know how many trees we are, where we have an approximate idea, and if we know how many sheets of paper we can get out of a tree, and you just do the math on 14.6 trillion photos, you will have to deforest the whole world until mid-June to provide Kodak with paper, to print memories on paper. And that is the reason why Kodak is not around anymore, because no one will deforest the world to provide paper for memories. It just doesn't make sense. Microsoft, for me, is somewhere between worlds, because a lot of Microsoft mindset is a linear organizational mindset, because one of the things that differentiates linear from exponential organizations is the concept of competition. And Microsoft always wants to be better at something to beat someone. Usually it's Apple. They want to produce a better tablet PC than Apple is doing. They want to be better in hardware. They want to be better in software. Their perspective is, what is my competitor doing and how can I outsmart my competitor? And the world of linear organizations for a successful company looks pretty much like this. And maybe there is a little curved arrow here, but it's going up because one decision leads to a future success. And if the decision is right and if the success is right, we talk about scaling products. And I'm sure you've heard that term before, or you've heard that question before. Maybe you've even asked that question before. Does it scale? Sorry. And please don't take it personally, but that comes from the concept of the linear organization. And of course, while I'm sharing this with you, I just want to put that little seed in your brains to constantly think of, through the glasses of a scientist, what would that mean for science, what I've just shared with you? One of the metrics of success of science definitely is publications. How many publications did you bring out to the world? Is that your metrics of success? For many it is. So if you're more successful if you have more publications. It's basically the same concept. It's basically the same idea of scaling your skill of writing publications. And a good question to ask to move on, to get out of this box, is what would be your most counterintuitive decision? What would be a next step? If you would do this next step, everyone would say, I wouldn't do it. If I were you, I wouldn't do it. It's very likely the more people respond with worries and doubt to what you suggest, that you're tackling a topic the world hasn't seen before. Because everything we have seen before, we know and we have an opinion. But everything we have not seen before, we do not know. So we only have an opinion. And that opinion always means, I don't want change. So I don't believe it. Or maybe someone tried it and it didn't work. And you are convinced it won't work. I can remember 4 years ago, I had conversation with people about autonomous cars. And people who are smart and They read papers every day. They're really well informed. They're curious. They're interesting conversation partners. And I said, I'm never going to stop driving. There's no way I'm going to let go of steering my car. This autonomous car thing is never going to happen. By then already in San Francisco, we had 1,000 self-driving cars with the permission to test drive on the street. There were 2 people in the car. One always had to have the hand on the steering wheel because it's by law, but the car was always driving. And I think 80 companies or something like that had the permission to do test driving. When you see this every day, 4 years ago, my daughter came to San Francisco to study there, to go to high school there. And for her, it was a daily routine when she went to school in the morning that the 8 Volvos from Uber were passing by our house, and she saw self-driving cars every day. Her friends back in Vienna, they didn't think about it because they didn't see it. It was so distant. The problem or the future was so far away from the living rooms that their only reaction was, this is not going to happen. And the closer to what's going to happen, the more you understand a lot more is happening than we think there is. So whenever you're looking into this concept of making something the world hasn't seen before, making something that's very counterintuitive, you will face headwinds. Depends on where you are and depends on how people approach your out of the box thinking, your different thinking, leaving the comfort zone. How many times did you hear that? Let me move on and let me share a little about the exponential organization. And I think this is where it gets exciting. You remember I said Microsoft wants to beat Apple at producing the better tablet PC. And Simon Sinek shared from his talk where he was, in a talk he shared from his experience where he spoke in front of Microsoft managers and then he spoke in front of Apple managers. And 75% of the time, Apple managers spoke about how they will be better at Apple. And then a few weeks later, he spoke at Apple, and 100% of the Apple managers spoke about how they can make education better for students and for teachers. And after the Microsoft presentation, Simon Sinek was given the new Surface Pro. And after the Apple presentation, he shared that experience with an Apple manager and said, hey, they gave me the Surface Pro, and it's actually really cool. And the response of the Apple manager was, I have no doubt. Because Apple's mission is not being better than Microsoft in something. They want to tackle a problem and solve the problem. Airbnb, these are all cases you of course are familiar with, but maybe there's this little twist that makes you understand why they are so successful. Because Airbnb understood that everything you don't use, everything you own and you don't use is an asset. So we can turn all of these assets into an income. Which leads me to the 3rd generation of ownership. We had ownership. I grew up with the idea of what you need is what you should own is what you should need. You should have your own car, you should have your own house, because borrowing or renting something that you need on a daily basis is not a good idea. And it made sense for me. And then there came new generations that, hey, why do I have to own all this stuff? Ownership is just a burden. I don't need my room. I don't need my car all the time, but I need a car. I want to have a car when I need it, and I only want to pay during that time when I need it. And that's called access versus ownership. So you have access to things that you don't have to own. And we're now looking into a 3rd phase, and the 3rd phase, I call it distributed ownership. So it means that you might own 5 cars, but when you need a car, you probably embark some of the random cars just passing by your house because the 5 cars are down on the street working for you. You might own an apartment, but the apartment you live in, you rent. Because your lifestyle would change, and you might have children, and then the children grow out, and then you have this huge house and you don't know what to do with it. So you can, if you have an apartment, if you rent something, it's a lot easier to let go. It's a lot easier to just cancel the lease and terminate the lease and find a new place. When you own it, it feels a lot more complicated. So everything you own makes money for you, and everything you need, you buy and you use. In the concept of access versus ownership is the next generation of ownership. Another amazing company. I'm not the biggest fan of Jeff Bezos because I think there are a few things that are questionable in his decisions. But when you look into how he understands his company and how he understands how he can make life for his audience, for his customers more exciting, more relevant, it basically all comes to the point that your life is a series of logistic decisions. And that's not what you've signed up for. So how about I take care of all these decisions so you have time for the really important stuff in your life? And Amazon is doing experiments like every week. So the idea of growth hacking, and I'm going to go into this later, is run experiments in a 2-week circle. And there is a director of growth, and his responsibility is hypergrowth. He's there in the company just to grow the company. And you can only grow the company if you make a lot of experiments in a very short time. And you don't think about, I'm not going into the failure culture because that's a fetish that's used over capacity. And I'm very much against this. I don't think that anyone really loves mistakes, even though now we claim fail fast, fail forward. I think that unless we are in the failure business, we shouldn't put too much attention on mistakes. Of course, we have to document them because a mistake is nothing else than a data point. And data points' reason for being is to inform future decisions. So everything that we're doing leaves information, leaves a data point, produces a data point, and that data point should inform our next decisions. And that's what happens if you're an experimenting company. And Amazon is so good at that because they have reached like so many people in their different ways of life, on the different stages of life. They've been in living rooms, and they've been as a distant supplier for young entrepreneurs, providing clouds, and so much more. Not to stick too long with Amazon, of course, we need to mention Tesla, and Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is, for one, a data company, but they're a data company in the energy space. And there are people in the energy space who produce, who store, and who consume energy. And Tesla says, like, why 3 people? Why is that not all of this in your own infrastructure? You can produce your own energy. You can store your own energy. And of course, you can use your own energy. That's what you're doing already. So what's so special with exponential organizations? They actually understand that humans have emotions, needs, desires, worries, fears, wishes, whatever it is. And they want to build an operating system around these emotions, because once you have an operating system for emotions, you can create market spaces. Because the foundation of a market space is an operating system. The foundation of a market where you go shopping on a Saturday morning is space. The foundation of, I don't know, the App Store is the infrastructure of distributing apps, producing apps and distributing apps, but also attracting others to do the same. And this is how you can see an exponential growth, because it starts with the 3 big bubbles. But all these 3 big bubbles attract other smaller bubbles, and all these smaller bubbles attract another bubble. And if you see how this is growing, you can perfectly well draw an exponential curve. So how about exponential science? How about this? Where is science far away from being an exponential mindset, or where is science actually already into this way of thinking, this exponential thinking? I don't know if you ever heard of iWire. It's a Princeton/MIT co-developed project where they've invited everyone to map retinal neurons. And it was launched in December 2012. And in 5 years, they had 250,000 users from 150 countries signing up and designing or creating or shaping or mapping, however you'd like to phrase it, the brain. Again, what would be your most counterintuitive decision? Is that a laboratory? Are these scientists? Is that a scientific academy? Is she your next project lead? I don't know. It doesn't have to be. It's not about that. I think that you should all turn your laboratories into beer parties, into Oktoberfests. It's not that I'm saying that. I'm saying, what do you think it's like, make a list of 10 things that science has been doing the last 250 years. And then ask yourself, what if none of this is available today? Where would you do it? How would you do it? With whom would you do it? What would you make differently? I think that's a good starting point to get away from the structures and the belief systems that you've been taught at university. And your teachers, your professors have been taught the same thing when they were at university. And that built a foundation, a solid foundation of something that gets older and older. And then companies start to be faster at science than scientific institutions. I just like to drop this here, and I'm curious to hear a little later from you what you think about it and how you can relate to this. And pardon the typo, I'm going to touch the indicators of a linear mindset now. So let's go into the 101 of linear thinking. I mentioned that before, the idea of competition is outdated. If you think in a competitive way, you put yourself, it's in the nature of the course. You put yourself always in number 2 because there's always someone else you think is doing something better than you and you want to achieve that level. But the moment you're there, you will find another one who's doing something better than you and you want to achieve that level. So get rid of this idea of finding out what your competitors are doing and trying to be better at that. Because your competitors, here's some little secret, they have the same fears, worries, doubts, and uncertainty just like you. I don't know about you, I don't know about your organizations. I know about a lot of businesses where internal processes outbeat external delivery by a factor of 80 to 20. I was working with Siemens 10 years ago and I asked them, because I realized they have processes for everything. And I asked them, if the last customer would leave the building, how long would you continuously having the same workload? And the answer was 2 months. 2 months of having the same task list from 8 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, or from 9 to 6, wherever it is, doing the same things, even without a new customer coming in. This is a death sentence of an organization that wants to think in exponential growth. So what's your KPI? Is it publications? Is it making money? For companies, it's making money. And that's why I love to paraphrase this, one of the Singularity University founders, Peter Diamandis, who says, hey, if you want to be a billionaire, you just have to change the life of 1 billion people. So if I'm an organization or if I'm a scientific organization, I have to ask myself, what problem is big enough? If I would solve it, the life of 1 billion people would be better. And that's moonshot thinking. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that we should disregard the problems of 100,000 people. I'm saying that we should be very careful where we put our attention and where we put our focus and where we put our time. Because it's very likely that a lot of people share the same problem. And it's very likely that for these, we have the same very, very limited amount of time to solve it than for all the other problems we see. Another concept of linear thinking is never pull the plug, forcing projects alive, adding a feature, adding something, trying to, because there was a success 15 years ago, so we must make it work because it worked for 15 years. There is no way it won't work the next 15 years. That's a very linear way of thinking. And I can also explain this because when I was young, we didn't even have mobile phones. We met at a place in Vienna and the only phone we had was the landline at home. So if anyone came late, there was no way to contact the others. Everyone was gone. So you had very clear motivation not to be late. And then 10 years later, someone came up with a mobile phone. And then 10 years later, or I don't know, 5 years later, someone came up with a smartphone. And then 2 years later, someone came up with an app store in the smartphone. And then 1 year later, they said, hey, you can all produce apps. And then 6 months later, the market was swamped with apps and everyone was trying to solve a problem with the devices. So when we come from a world where technological advancements are in 1 year, 2 year, 5 years time frame, it doesn't feel exponential. It feels like a linear curve. It's like if you would double 0.02 and 0.04 is still a 0.0 something. But as it gets closer and closer, you get the feeling of, okay, here is something going on. And where we are today, Silicon Valley operates 5 years ahead of technology. So the moment the new iPhone will be announced in fall, that already will be a 5 years old device. So it's hard to imagine. And I don't know if you've ever been asked the difference between 30 linear steps. So every step a meter makes 30 meters, and 30 exponential steps. So every step is twice as long as the other one, as the previous one. So 1 meter, 2 meter, 4 meters, 16 meter, 8 meters, 16 meter. And you're all scientists, so you're probably a little closer to mathematics. So you will not be surprised that 30 steps means 25 times around the earth. People can grasp that. So you have to write it down. You have to write down and understand what it means. And many, many times companies would have saved millions if they would have pulled the plug early enough and discontinued producing something where there's no market anymore for it. Another big deal is collaboration. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe also there is something like mindset 5 years ahead of the present, because more and more I hear people being proud of collaborative efforts, having done something together. And to me personally, I don't know what you think about it, but to me personally, collaboration means a lot of meetings. And I don't know about you, but I don't like meetings, because a meeting is waste of time, waste of efficiency. And also I have seen so many meetings where at the end of the meeting, the project was less exciting than at the beginning of the meeting. Why? Because in a meeting, you not only try to put everyone on the same page, you also deal with compromises. And a compromise is a solution where each party is equally unhappy. So I'm not too happy about collaboration as a concept. I think it's outdated as well, but there must be something instead, you think, and that's coordination. None of these people had a meeting before they changed the tires. If that would have happened, the driver would have lost the race. Everyone knows what to do. So how would that change your organization if you don't coordinate, if you don't manage people anymore, but you manage processes? To make everyone, to create and design intrinsic motivation, so everyone is really psyched about the process and the progress, instead of forcing people together in meetings where people lose excitement per minute. And I'm curious to go back there if you want, and also I'm always looking to the side if you're chatting with me, if you disagree here. Maybe in science it's different, but I have this belief that if you would reduce the meetings you have by half, you would probably double your efficiency. And then something that I see a lot is, once you've found something that you think the world hasn't seen before, you start erecting a wall around it. You lock it down, you secure intellectual property. So no one but you should know it. And if people want to know it, they have to pay. And I don't think that this is something that will help you growing exponentially. And again, I mean, we all know that Tesla released their IP for everyone who wants to use the technology to build autonomous cars. That's a very counterintuitive decision, if you think about it. So what's the transformation? What's the way to get there? And I think there are three foundations, three fundamentals of an exponential organization. First one is the soft skills. We're talking about social intelligence. I'm going to go into this in a minute. Second one is growth hacking. We're talking about new organizational structure. How can you keep on being innovative if the structure you're working within hasn't changed for 50 years? And then I spoke about the operating system, the market space, and that's a problem-focused solution, service, products thinking. What's the problem I can solve? What do I do for people? And I hope this makes sense so far. Let me double check with the time. We're still good in time. I'm trying to catch up a little so we don't overdraft too much, and I also want to keep some time for you to have interaction. So I'm keeping at that pace. If you want me to stop and discuss something, raise your hands if enough people agree. And yes, of course, David, open data is a big thing. And I think that there are no failure stories related to open data, but you probably know better. Let's move on. Social intelligence. And I don't know if anyone has ever heard of social intelligence. It's about to make you understand how people click, so you behave in a way people enjoy having you around. It's not emotional intelligence where you identify and understand and analyze people. It's about how do you change your behavior so people, or how do you adapt your behavior so people want you around. And that's social intelligence. And there are combined 7 skills. And I'm sure I'm not sharing anything new with you now, but maybe the way they are compiled is new for you. And that always helps to follow it. I think if something's been told many times, it just means that it hasn't been told in a simple way, enough in a simple way so people actually can understand what it means. So I'm trying to compress these skills. We're talking about the 7 skills of social intelligence. Body language, how you move, how you act, how you approach people means a lot. Tony Robbins said, and I think it's not Tony Robbins who said that, but I heard it from Tony Robbins. He said, only, let me admit 3 people here, only 7% of your communication is words. 7% of your communication is words. So that basically means that 93% of your communication is everything around the words. It's the speed, it's the volume, it's how you move, how you act, how you trust me that what I'm saying I'm burning for, versus I'm representing the concepts of exponential organization and social intelligence with you. First, we talk about body language. That's how you act and move and behave while you're saying something, because your body language will support the message and people will have a better time to attach your movements and the whole 3-dimensional experience or 4-dimensional experience with what you're saying. If I would give this presentation in that way to you for an hour or more, I'm sure I would have lost you. I'm sure that you will have signed off and said, I might look into the recording, or good that NIKI will share the slides with us later because I don't want to listen to him. Body language is crucial wherever you go. Conversational agility. If you are not able to articulate your idea, it is as if you wouldn't have an idea. If you're not able to articulate your worries, no one will hear your worries. They won't make your worries their worries. So of course we're talking about the art of storytelling here, which is might be my biggest domain, as I've been working with TED for so many years. And to bring this very condensed, there's a whole webinar, there is a curriculum around the art of storytelling that I'm running. So I'm giving you the 5 minutes download of the art of storytelling. First, who are you talking to? I have seen so many startups having one pitch. They have 2 minutes and they only prepare a 2-minute deck, but it's always the same. They completely disregard that the audience changes. And I'm not so much into profiling, but I really love this 4-clustered idea of people who feel physical pain if you talk too much, of people who want to understand the process because otherwise they don't trust you, of people who want to create an emotional connection with you because otherwise they think you only want their money. They might talk about your hobbies, your weekend, and then from 1 hour, only 5 minutes is business. But if you've done the 55 minutes well, they will be very open to everything you're saying. And then there are people who can't listen. They always have to talk. So you understand already with this cluster of 4, you must prepare 4 different approaches. You have everyone's attention for 20 seconds. And if you approach someone who feels physical pain if you talk too much, we're talking about what you've done last weekend. That person will just wait for get out of this information, this conversation. So really, if you want to sell something to someone, prepare 4 different first 20 seconds. Because in these first 20 seconds, you will always also recognize who are you actually talking to if you were not able to do some research. And usually it's very easy to do research today about people. Why should they care? Give them a reason to listen. What should they see differently? That's the idea. You must, otherwise there's no reason of talking to them. And why me? Again, it's not about your achievements, your journey, your awards, the stages that you were on. It's about the passion. It's about that you really burn for this topic and everyone understands that this is important for you. I don't know if you've ever heard about the funnel of importance. So there is someone who owns a project, or there's someone who owns the scientific organization. He really cares. Then there is someone who owns the project. He also really cares because he might have identified the project and he owns the project. And then there's a project team. The project team definitely cares a little less than the project leader. And then there are people who are exposed to what comes out and they didn't even wait, they didn't even ask for it. When I'm speaking in front of people, when I'm on a stage at a conference, there's a curator, he cares a lot. There's a speaker, he cares a little less because he only cares about his 20 minutes. And then there's audience, they care for 20 seconds. So just imagine if you're a project leader and you care already this little, how good will it get? How good can it get? How little will everyone care about what you actually want to do? So please don't bore anyone with your story of achievements. Share passion. Go into something. And if you're not passionate about what you're doing, I would strongly consider questioning what you're doing. Because I think that's the good thing with the time we live in. No one should do what they shouldn't want, what they don't want to do. And everyone can do everything. There's actually a fifth one, and I call it social agenda. And the social agenda means that it's basically the North Star, why you're talking to someone. Why are you doing this? I don't think that you should go anywhere without a social agenda. If I go out in the evening to meet people or to a conference or wherever, I think about, I don't know, maybe my social agenda could be, today I want to talk about the future of education. And you can take it for granted, if that is your social agenda to go to a conference, you will have these conversations. If you speak in front of people and your agenda is, I want to go home with 5 business cards, I want to make 5 connections with 5 different people from 5 different industries, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because your decisions steer towards your North Star. So it's not there, it's a little insight, but if you're invited to speak and you don't know why you're speaking, say no. Or think about why you want to speak. No one can put a gun on your head and say, you have to go to this stage. Third one, that was a little more than 5 minutes. Assertiveness. Assertiveness is the art of giving feedback. And I'm sure you've all been in a situation that you shared feedback with someone and the second of the response was where you already regretted that you shared feedback with that person. Probably with your partners, like, why did I just mention this? I could have been so much better if I just haven't shared that. And if you think this 3-4 times, you stop giving feedback. And that's why managers don't know anything about the people that work for them, because they have stopped giving feedback, because they're not heard, they're ignored, they're overspoken, they're regretted, they get a bounce back. Or the best case scenario is everyone listens, everyone says, yes, we should do this, but no one's doing it. So 3 ways of giving feedback. Passive, usually, I don't want to separate here, but usually it's something women do. Through my behavior, I want you to understand what's right and what's wrong. Aggressive, something that usually more men do. I'm right, what I say makes sense, but I'm giving you a hard time to take it because I'm very offensive. Passive aggressive is, I think, the worst. So I'm talking about you to another person and you're in the room, but I'm not talking to you. That's passive aggressive. So of course, we want to be assertive, and the superpower is abundance. So how can you find the right language if you care, but you don't care too much? And there are several methods. Again, this is another webinar that I'm going through. Several methods that help you calming down. One thing that always works is slow down. If you slow down and take your time with feedback, you give yourself more time to think about what you're saying, and you give the other party more time to listen and understand what you're saying. And it's probably likely that you find better language for giving feedback, for articulating what you'd like to change. And then, of course, you can put yourself into the position, how much do I care in 6 months from today? Many aspects. Also, the formulas. I don't know if you are aware of what you're doing, but I want you to know that when you're doing this, it feels like this for me. Can we do something about it? That's a formula. If you find a formula that works for you, nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying what you want to share in a formal way, because it's not about sharing it in a way, it's about the other person being able to take it, and you move on and you're not bounce back. The skill of responding to any random sentence in perfect British English. Isn't it so? Don't we all love perfect British English? What I'm talking about here is humor. And my inspiration for humor is improv. That's a form of comedy. There's a book called Improv Wisdom. I can only recommend this book because she brings together all the wisdom. She brings together all the aspects that make someone funny, but it's actually also aspects that totally change your way of seeing the world and how the world around is happening to you. I'm not going to go deep into this. As I said, different topic. All of this is a different topic. It's a 1 hour's webinar that I'm doing every other week. Charisma, magnetism. How do you behave in a way that people enjoy you? There is, again, so many little things like addressing the body to the person you're talking to and not talking like this. Not talking, looking away, looking around. Have you been in a situation where you wanted to shake someone's hand and he approached you, and the moment you had body contact, that person already moved on and didn't even look in your eyes? How did it feel for you? That's not a very charismatic approach. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you did this. Probably not by intentionally, not by purpose, but you might have done this as well. One before the last is approach. Whenever you go to a conference, you would like to have a conversation with someone. No one goes to an event not to meet anyone, but for some reason we are shy to do this. So let me tell you, everyone else is at the same conference for the same reason. I want to have a conversation with someone. And there are 3 ways of getting into a conversation. One is you approach someone. Second one is someone approaches you. Third one, someone introduces someone to you. Second and third are based upon hope. You wouldn't want to make life decisions based upon hope. So go ahead and approach people. And here's my golden trick. It's beautiful. It works all of the time. I have no idea why, but it always works. 3 types of people at a conference. First one, the guy looking at the phone. Ignore that person. You would be the best friend of that person during the whole evening. And I know that you went to this conference to have a conversation, but you didn't go to this conference to have one conversation. You wanted to meet more people. Ignore the guy on the phone. And then there are settings of 2 and 3. And the third one is 4 people and more. And you never want to address a group of 4 or more because this is not one conversation. It's shallow, it's not interesting, it's boring. You feel like, what am I actually doing here? So ignore the one with the phone and ignore groups of more than 4. So how can you approach a group of 2 that makes it feel for you that you're in the right spot? We call this open and closed standing. That's an open 2. So people standing like a V, there's a room for a third person. You can go there, ask, can I join? Of course they let you join. You close it to a closed 3, or keep it even open to a 4th person. However, you're part of the conversation. A closed 2, people are standing in front of each other like this. You can also go there and ask if you can join the conversation. And they would probably be polite and say, yeah, of course, join us. But they are having a conversation with no room for a third person. They won't even recognize when you're leaving their conversation. And for you, it will be devastating. You'll feel like, oh, I should go home. And the same is with the setting of 3. Open 3, closed 3. Go to open 2s and go to open 3s. My promise, at every event with more than 20 people in the room, you will see settings of open 2s and open 3s. Go there, start a conversation. You will have a great evening. The last one I think is also very important. I call it default setting, which is basically becoming the person you want to be. And everyone bends, many people, not everyone, I don't want to generalize, but everyone, a lot of people bend themselves into a different version of themselves because they think that's what others expect from them. I don't know, throw a stone if you never behaved in a way because you thought that's exactly what others expect from you. We've all been there. The problem is if I bend myself into a version that's not me, I attract people I don't want to hang around with. I attract situations I don't feel comfortable with. I find myself in jobs I don't want to do. Everything doesn't fit. And it all starts with bringing yourself into a version of yourself that's not you. So my little gift for you, if you can say it that way and take it that way, tonight when you go to bed, ask yourself, was today a good snapshot of myself? Was I the person I want to be? And if you ask yourself this question every day more and more, you will become the person you want to be. And if you realize after a month that you haven't been the person you want to be, you actually can get really annoyed because you missed a chance for a whole day not being who you want to be. So that's the skills of social intelligence. Next chart, and I'm moving on. And please, as I said before, I love interaction. I'm totally open to this. Let me watch the clock. We will run a little over time with this bombing hiccup. Juliana asks how to develop cross-cultural competences and sensibility. Usually it's really good if you have team, depends on the size of the team. If you have cross-cultural competences and characters, it's really good to put ambassadors in between these people. An ambassador doesn't even have to be, I mean, of course it's good to have an ambassador who has empathy, who's antenna towards people. But very often it's just good enough to have someone who's not affected to be a go-to and intermediate in situations that become tricky. Very often, and I guess most of the time, the biggest problem with cross-cultural issues is lack of information. So if you have teams where there are different cultures, I think your management role number one is to teach everyone in the team about the other culture, or to allow representatives of their cultures teach the others about their culture. The more I understand where you're coming from, the more I know it's not about me. But if I don't understand where you're coming from and you approach me in a way that's normal for you, that might be very chaotic for me. I might feel very uncomfortable. Not afraid, being afraid to ask. Being afraid to ask, I think truth is something someone has to deserve. Having a culture of asking is something an organization must deserve, because we have bad experience in asking. So I can invite you to ask before you start trusting me that asking is okay, because your default setting will be, I don't want to make myself vulnerable. I don't want to ask a question that's stupid. I don't want to ask a question where I don't get an answer. I don't want to ask a question that's ignored, and on and forth. I have to establish a culture that asking is okay in first place. It's same with truth. We have learned that most of the time, or many situations in your life, it's better not to go for the truth. Why? Because we have experienced from the past that after sharing the truth, the situation became worse. So truth is something someone has to deserve. Being asked is something an organization has to establish as a culture. I hope that makes sense for you. So if I would move on, the next topic would be growth hacking. And we're talking about innovation, not with a focus on the output, we're talking about innovation with a focus about the structure. Growth hacking is a participatory element, which basically means we're running experiments and everyone is invited to be part of the experiment. There is no bottom-up or top-down culture. It's like an inside-out. Whoever in the organization has an idea, that idea is listened to, and then it's biased, de-biased, let's put it that way. Bias means I like it or I don't like it. You don't want to make a decision based upon I like it or I don't like it. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you made a decision and next day you ask yourself, what did I do? What did I think? Why did I do this? And I guess you've all been there. And now, what if that decision was about mission critical future of the science, of the company, of relationships? So you don't want to do this. You want to make decisions more and more. You want to make decisions based upon data. So if you think about ideation, and then there are tons of ideas and you might like them or dislike them, what you have to do is you have to put away the bias and you have to add data to the idea. How can you do this? One of the ways of doing this, and that's from the growth hacking principle of growth hacking, you score every idea by what's the impact? How many people will I reach? How confident am I doing this? And how easy will it be to do this? Because if you understand that to run an experiment will take 6 months, the reason why you said yes to the experiment will not be true 6 months later. You can take this for granted. In a company or in an organization where you have a director of growth implemented and a growth hacking process, the cycles are 2 weeks. And you should always have, depending on the size of the organization, minimum of 2 experiments per week. Sorry, per progress, per cycle. That means that you have 4 experiments running every week. And if you have 4 experiments running every week in a 2-week cycle for 6 weeks, just to give it a try, you have probably gained more insight of what works and what does not work than the 5 years before. But that already requires a different setup. The growth team is recruited from all the different buckets, silos, or whatever you'd like to see it, teams within the organization. Because being responsible for innovation is not the responsibility of an innovation team. And I don't know about science to that matter, who's responsible for coming up something to put science on, but I'm sure that everyone ever involved in science ever had an idea about what we should follow, but maybe not the status or the rank in the organization to get an ear, to articulate and be heard. And that's the concept of growth hacking. But an idea can be funny but irrelevant because it doesn't impact anyone. An idea can impact half of the world, but we can't do it. An idea can impact half of the world and we could actually do it, but it takes, I don't know, 5 years to even look at it. That's always bad. So if you put like, I don't know, 100% impact, 100% confidence, 100% ease, that idea scores a number. And then you decide, I'm not pursuing any of these ideas that has less than 280. If you take 100 as 100%. Just one example. If you want to take 1 to 5, then every idea has a maximum score of 15, and you decide not to pursue any idea that's lower than 13. Even though you might have loved it, but it's too complicated. It's not easy. You don't trust you can do it. It's irrelevant for most of the people because you want to go away from I like it or I dislike it. Also, when you present something to someone, you don't want to hear I like your idea. Trust me. Because if someone says I like your idea and it turns out to be a bad idea, very seldom that person comes back to you and says, I loved it. Very often it says, I said I liked it, but I was skeptical from day one. And never ever appeared in life a situation where someone who said, I hate that idea, but it turned out to be a success, that person raises their hand and said, it might be a success, but I hated it. This is not happening. So if you understand it's not happening, please try to steer away from bias. I mentioned the failure thing that I'm a little careful with. Of course, embrace it, but don't focus too much on failure. Most of us are not in the failure business. It's important to document it because everything that goes south is information about things not working. And mixing of the teams, as I said before. I don't know the structures of science teams, but probably they also have strict borders. Here is my competence. I'm not working beyond my competence. I don't know about you guys, but most of the time I talk with people who have competence, 20% of their time focus on competence and 80% of their time, everyone else can actually do what they're doing. So how can you separate this? I don't know if that makes sense for you. It's a 1 slide for a 60 or 7 slides presentation, but I think it's really important bringing it in here because the culture of experiment is crucial if you want to become an exponential scientist. I'm coming to the final part of this, and that's kind of sort of thoughts that I have, and I just want to drop them in without going too deep into, but I want to feel your reactions. I want to hear from you what you think about it and how much it makes sense for you. 1, future is not within being better what you've always been good at. I mentioned that before. That's the death of the car industry right now. How can you acquire foresight science? How can you operate 5 years ahead of problem? What if you work on something? I mean, maybe you're doing this. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing wrong here. But wouldn't it be exciting to know exactly what problem needs to be solved that we don't even know about today in 5 years? And give scientific research and energy and focus towards a problem before it actually exists? I would love to hear more about that from your ends, how much you are into foresight science. How good are you in designing for intrinsic motivation to really care, to make things important? I mentioned this with the art of storytelling. Very often I hear from scientists, and the scientists I coach are not stage people. They have other people to talk. They want to do the work. They are okay with spending 48 hours without daylight, but they don't want to use a daylightless room when there are 100 people sitting in front of them. A lot of data doesn't mean smart on data. And I mean that a lot of organizations have really much data, and I guess you guys have a lot of data, but the concept of big data was a bit of an economical disappointment, let's put it that way. It doesn't mean that you should have a lot of data. It shouldn't mean that you should know what the data is telling you. And the more you know what data is telling you, the more you have a chance of actually getting smart on data. I mentioned that earlier, just to be aware why people give you their money. And that's, I think, true for every industry. What you do gains pleasure, what you do avoids pain, or what you do suspends discomfort. And please disagree with me, but I think that most of the time when you get support in something, it falls under one of these three categories. Here we go. Future of your scientific organization on 3 pillars. 1, how can you attract the best players? How can you be that organization the best scientists in the world want to work at? And it's not, here's my little secret, it's not that you pay them so much. Talk about money. How much do you have to sponsor innovation? How much do you have to look for sponsorship of innovation? How much do you have to throw good money after bad money, is the saying when someone doesn't pull the plug. So scientific organizations, as much as I understand and know, rely very much on money coming in without an expectation of output. It's good if you're doing your job well, but there's always a certain part of a risk within. And the structure, I mentioned the structure. How much innovation is actually possible within the current setup? If the setup is the same like 50 years ago, the answer is very limited. Because 50 years ago, everyone was fine if every 25 years something relevant comes out to the market. That works in a structure 50 years ago. It doesn't work in a structure today where you want to work 5 years ahead of problem or 5 years ahead of technology. A friend of mine said, and I'm paraphrasing here, be careful with religions. Shall it be agile or design thinking or change management or business model canvas, all these, I call these religions, are dangerous because they're all very smart and they all have really good elements, but you shouldn't use it over capacity. You shouldn't go blindfolded into this and say, okay, this is the process and we're not doing anything else but what's been told to do next. Totally new to business world, not sure about the science world, the concept of being a mentor and having a mentor. And if you want explanation about what a mentor is, which I doubt, please put it in the chat and we can talk about it. I just want to come to a point where we'll have conversation. How are you connected with disruption? Don't bring disruption into your existing organization. If you want to be innovative from inside, you're deemed to fail. Don't make any startup hubs or don't try to embed the startup mindset, I'm saying startup because this is so fashionable right now, into your existing structure. But it's good, it makes sense. If there is a future of companies like WeWork, which is doubtable to be honest, but if there's a future, it might make sense just to book 6 tables in a co-working space and allow your people to go and work there whenever they want to. Because they might want to have a coffee break, and during that coffee break, someone else from somewhere else will also crave coffee, and during that, you might have a very random and serendipitous conversation. This is unplannable, but embracing serendipity is something that's in the DNA of a Silicon Valley mindset. I mentioned that before, don't pretend you love failure. And if all of this makes sense for you, and if you agree to everything that I say and everything that I suggest, and you're not doing it, then it's just a fucking excuse, because there's always a fucking excuse for everything. No matter, you are the architects of the future. And if we want to raise the ships, we have to, or we want to elevate the ships, we have to raise the water. We have to all grow, because otherwise we're pulling down the others who might be interested to grow, but they just adopted what their neighbor is doing. That was me. So I'm curious, what do you think about it? I'm turning off the screen sharing. I would strongly invite you to, if you want to, also unmute yourself. Go on video if your data connection allows that. We're 18 people, which is beautiful. I think we're more than where we started. Alexandra says, I don't feel like the architects of the future, nature is. I can live with that. I can live with that. It's a beautiful way of seeing the world. However, if you see it as a metaphor, you can either decide if you're the driver or the passenger. And if I have the choice, I would always sit behind the steering wheel. And I would want to decide where I ship the boat, where I drive the vehicle, where I steer my team, where I steer the process, where I steer the organization. I love the idea of not sitting next to the driver and hoping that the driver knows his job well. And that's what I mean with it. But I of course, I can fully embrace and endorse that nature doesn't care about us humans. And nature doesn't have a problem at all. And if we continue fucking up and extinct, nature would just wipe the dust off their shoulders and say, humans tried that, didn't work. Let's move on. Totally agree. What else did I not answer? We need more role models rather than mentors. I understand what you're saying, Nicole, and I think it makes a lot of sense, because I think that the source of the problem of what made you write this is that there are too many role models fucking up as a role model. There are too many people in the first row who do things we don't want them to do, or which they shouldn't do because they are a role model. I think we have by number enough role models, or enough people who are in the position of being a role model, but they're not capable of the role. They raise the power that they have for something that's definitely not role model worthy. The difference between a role model and a mentor is that the role model is very distant. The role model stands in front of you and shares things that make a lot of sense. But the mentor is there for you when you wake up in the morning and you go to the bathroom and you look into the mirror and you watch your face and you ask yourself that one question: am I enough? Because when you go out, when you continue your stuff, when you go out to business, when you go out to your faculty, when you go out wherever, there are people around you, there are people following you, there are people listening to you. There's very little space for vulnerability. But we all have it. We all have moments of uncertainty. We all have moments of doubts. We all have moments where we want to ask someone where it's okay to say, I don't know. Tell me. And that person knows me. So I know when I say tell me, that there's something that I can hear that's relevant to me as a character. And that's my mentor. And I think it's also important not only to have a mentor, but also to be a mentor. I mean, you've probably heard a gazillion times the phrase, if you want to understand something, teach it. You get a so different perspective to the things that are important for you or the things that you're sharing. If the person trusting you and living your words shows you what it actually means in real life. And we have beautiful organizations here who actually connect mentors with mentees. And I got introduced to one of them. And since then, I'm in the Austrian startup community as a mentor. And it's beautiful working with these people because they trust you, but that's a privilege. So I have to be careful what I tell them. And I learned that everything that I do has an impact. So much about that. I don't know if that makes sense for you. We had cross-cultural situations. We spoke about that. Please let me know if I miss one answer. Having a mentor is a privileged position, but everyone can benefit from good role models, and role models are open in public to mentoring. So it's a bit like you get what you ask for. And if you want to have a mentor and there is this person that you might even perceive as a role model, go to this person and ask that person if he or she could be your mentor, because you want to learn from that person. And if that person is someone in your life, in your corridor, in your radius, probably easy. But if that person is someone that you know from the internet or from others of others, then work your way towards that person. You find someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows that person. And if it's important for you, you'll find your way to get there. And then you can finally ask the person, can you be my mentor? Because I like your way of seeing. I like your way of thinking. I don't know if that makes sense for you. What else? The importance of a foundation of trust in creating environments where individuals are willing to be vulnerable. How can we build and continually reinforce this foundation of trust? Wonderful question. I have a very short answer. I don't know, Margaret, if that answer is satisfying for you, but the answer is one step at a time. There's no shortcut to trust. There is a shortcut to distrust within a fraction of a second, but there is no shortcut to trust. And you have to walk the talk and make people trust. What you're saying is also what you're doing. What you're feeling and what you're offering is also something what you're able to take. I have seen so many cases where people were not able to, they were very inviting and open and offering, but they were in the second people redeemed their offers, they were overwhelmed and actually couldn't keep up to what they offered. That's where you get distrust within a second. You never go back to that person. I don't know if that makes sense for you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any more questions? And we ran 11 minutes over time. I guess the bomb, we can blame it on the bomb. And I'm so grateful that you came back, and actually even more than in the beginning. That's beautiful. And yes, as I said before, the session is recorded. So you're gonna get access to the recording. I have to do some little editing to make sure it's seamless. And you will also get the slides that I just clicked through. And I hope we see each other tomorrow in the same group size. Tomorrow we're going to do something that makes this all what I talked about more tangible for you. The next 2 days is going to be 2 fun and simple practices where I want you to turn Niki's words into action and tell me how this feels for you. Let me give you a little preview. And I have my notes. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. In the meantime, if you think there's something you'd like to ask, no new question. All right. So tomorrow we have two tasks that we're looking into. The first one is, what is the mindset of a data company? So how can you start acting and thinking like a data company? Which basically means identifying and asking yourself the question, falling towards an answer. What would I like to know about people? Okay, that's all about. I'm going to explain it to you, and then we're going to have, it's always 10 to 15 minutes, short breakouts. And I'm going to split you in groups, and that works pretty neatly here on Zoom. So you can do this together, and then we reconvene here as a whole, and then we talk about it. And the second one is, I mentioned the KPI. If your KPI is publications, what would it be if it wouldn't be that? And if you were free to do whatever you want to do and not measured by the amount of papers that you've published, what else would you do? So that's what we're going to look at tomorrow. And on Thursday, we're going to talk about ideation. So the anatomy of an idea will be on the agenda of Thursday. And I'm going to gear you up with a process to ideation, a process to come up with an idea. Bringing up an idea is not something that's limited to the skill of being creative. So you're going to get that. Juliana can't make it tomorrow. I'm so sorry for this. It totally makes sense to be back on Thursday. Whenever it works for you to be here, please join us. As I said before, on Wednesday, we talk about the ideas and prototyping, rapid prototyping, which is a core element. So we're going to go into the design thinking process. I don't know how familiar you are with design thinking. I'm going to wrap that up and build it out for you. And then you're going to prototype something for me. And on Friday, we're going to have an unconference. I don't know if you've ever heard of an unconference, that format of gathering. And we will talk about this tomorrow and on Thursday, when also it's also good one day after or 2 days after to reflect what I've said before and what I've heard before and what makes sense for me and what doesn't make sense for me. What's the discussion you want to have on Friday? What's the topic you want to put on the table on Friday? Because if Friday evening isn't different than 2.5 hours ago, I haven't done my job. And I'd be very frustrated because I feel like I've stolen 8 hours of your lifetime. So it only works if we do it together, but I want this to work. It's really important for me that I can give you something that makes a difference. And that comes all together in the unconference on Friday. That being said, I'm going to stay here for another 5 minutes, but if you want to sign off, just sign off and I'll see where this goes. Unmute yourself, show me your faces, talk to me, or just enjoy the rest of the day. And I can't wait to see you back tomorrow in the afternoon. Evelyn, how are you doing? Let me unmute you.
Everything's fine with me.
Good. Good. Such a great group of people here. So interesting. And thank you for all your nice words. Nice.
Nikki, could I ask one more question?
Yes. Go ahead.
You spoke about the importance of connecting with disruption, but not necessarily going this route of entirely trying to integrate it into your existing business model, for lack of a better word. Given the current very uncertain global order, with the pandemic and the various crises that's catalyzed, could you point us in any directions, interesting thinkers who are really diving into that and how to engage with disruption in this climate? Because it seems to be taking on an entirely new significance, even more so than in recent years.
So very good question. Thank you for rephrasing in a way more senseful way than I did. The answer is ubiquitous, everywhere. Go on meetup.com and figure out what's happening online. There is something that happens every Saturday. It's metal. If you go to the browser, metal.international. It's a massive platform with 300 people signing up every Saturday. It's a 3-hour session where everyone introduces from all different directions, from music, from entertainment, from tech, you name it. Some of the smartest people on earth, some of my coachees, some of the people from Singularity University, some of the people from MIT. It's a nice reunion. They meet every Saturday, and it's just like fueling up for me. And for everyone who doesn't really have this access to innovation, this access to the world of conferences, this is a beautiful thing. And you can sign up for a free pass and just sneak into, and that will already open up. Look into the TEDx event that's nearby you. Most of the TEDx events have webinars every week, every other week. They fully converted the whole thing to online. One of my favorite TEDx events, TEDx Gateway in Mumbai, They're having every Saturday and Sunday, they're having a 1-hour session. Just go to the event and figure out what's happening there. Most of them are operating on Zoom. Build your connections, approach people. Said, hey, what do you think about this? Go on a personal chat, connect on LinkedIn. I feel like, you can go anywhere in the world without traveling, and no one would, I wouldn't love this if I would have the option, but now as I don't have the options, I feel like, wow, this is so exciting. I can be in LA in the morning, in New York or in LA in the evening because of the time zone. I can be in Hong Kong in the morning. This morning I was in Hong Kong, by the way. And in a few hours, I'm going to be in San Francisco. And in between, I'm going to be in St. Louis. And this is insane because everyone's on the same, everyone has their backgrounds of their Zoom screens and everyone's doing something. So you don't have to figure out what's happening behind that wall where you just see the entrance of the building. And they all share the same platforms to meet. And meetup.com is a very good platform. It's just point and interest, everything is online. Metal International, I just stumbled across this 4 weeks ago actually. It's a membership-based thing and they really offer something. They really offer value for the money, but the Saturday passes are usually for free if you don't want to pay for it and if you don't join every Saturday. But if you join every Saturday, once we'll knock on your door and say, hey, you're gaining value. Is it okay for you if you sign up? Of course, it will be okay for you if you enjoy every Saturday, but just to go there, I think it's Metal International. Let me look. Did you check it?
I'll have a quick look.
Metal International. There you go. It's really great. I put it in the chat so everyone who's still there can also look it up and sign up.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I'll have a look at that. Thanks. That's really helpful.
Good. Still a few people here. David, how are you feeling? What do you think? You're right next to me, right? I can do this and actually could stretch your head, at least from the still that you have. Hey, Wendy.
Hi, I came in a little bit late because I had the timing wrong, but I would really like to be able to just flip through the slides that you had before joining the next time so that then I have a little bit of a background. And I know doing the editing is going to take a bit. What would be the possibility of seeing those?
You know what, give me a minute. I guess it's good if it's fast, right?
Yeah, I just don't want to ask a question that you've already covered previously.
So, A, that wouldn't matter at all, but B, someone said to me, if something takes less than 2 minutes, do it right now, because then you don't have to think about it anymore. So let me go into because I already have a low-res PDF.
Okay, that would be great. Also, just to give a bit of a background, I'm actually coming out of a university and would be posing most questions for my students because I need to be able to be preparing them for this, going in these directions, and so I'm going to be coming a little bit from another angle, but still find it really valuable.
Nice. Yeah, please. I'm open to all. Challenge me, ask questions. Don't worry if someone asked the same question before. Mm-hmm. Sometimes even if that person asked the same question before and you ask, I might find different words for your answer and it might make more sense for the person that already answered too earlier.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, good. But I look forward to the next step.
Good, wonderful. Yeah, if you stay here for another, I would say 90 seconds.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll just go back on mute and wait for it.
Sure. I can put it in the chat. Let's see. It should actually be. Sometimes SlideShare has some hiccups with the upload, but it should be okay.
Just coming back to Wendy, probably meanwhile, regarding the the connection actually with teaching. We were thinking about building this towards a teaching course and thinking about that. So it could be nice to think about that together, if you like. To apply it more in a teaching framework for students and let's say in the context of a summer school or whatever.
Yeah, I think one of the main things is just being able to, you know, wrapping some thinking around these very interdisciplinary young people that are coming in that have these amazing abilities, but it's just like this, you know, somewhere between a fog and of all of the different kinds of possibilities that they have to sort through, which can be really fascinating for one student, but really overwhelming for the next. And so it's good to be able to be able to navigate better, because I need to be able to help them understand how to navigate. And so I think there's two different kinds of things that need to happen within the academic setting. One is training the students themselves, which sometimes can be really tedious. And the other is training the teachers, because there's a lot of people out there that, you know, they have questions from their students and they don't know how to answer them anymore, because the world has changed so quickly. And because also over time, those of us sitting in universities don't really have the on the floor experience with people who are actually in the world of work and also in the world of business. And so it's really important to be getting information from the world of business that is being innovative and saying, this is then the best way to prepare your students to come to us. This is what we look for.
Two answers to this. I don't know if you heard, I guess you've heard of the flipped classroom before.
A little bit, but it's
the rough concept. If the
not enough.
Rough concept is students learn at home and discuss in the classroom.
Okay.
So you teach the students how to get information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this discussion is in the classroom. That's one thing.
Yeah, I think students do that anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you don't tell them to.
Also students, I think, are way more self-sufficient than teachers they think they are.
Yeah.
In the second, there is an institution in Silicon Valley. It's called Coxwell College. It's the second oldest university in Silicon Valley. And when they started 150 years ago, they were educating firefighters. And today they're a multimedia school where it's about film art, television, radio, and music. They have understood that as an academic institution, first, they must change their curriculum every 5 years. Second, to do so, they must go to organizations every 6 months. They're doing this every 6 months and said, what are the skills that you need in 2 years from today? Mm-hmm. And then with that information, they build a curriculum to educate these skills for the students. And then, of course, it's a smaller academic institution. Maybe it's a little easier because they're smaller, but the approach is actually applicable, I think, to all sizes of institutions, because even if you have a fixed curriculum, there must be some part of flexibility.
Yeah,
absolutely. It must be like, okay, 80% is what I have to do, but the 20% is what we decide here in the classroom. What do we actually want to learn? Or you go to conference and what skills do you need in 2 years? But I think I like the trust, right? The trust principle. And the trust principle means that children know really well what they want to learn and what they want to know. And what if so Janie McGonigal shared with us at TED in 2012 that the same amount of time students are in a classroom, they spend on the game terminal.
Yeah.
Exactly, like 21,000 hours. Okay. And then you can say that's a bad thing because it's wasted lifetime. Or you can say this is a massive potential of untapped creativity. So let's give them challenges. Let's give them challenges that are not solved in laboratories. And she shared cases where the students on the screens, on the terminals, on the game consoles, they were happily taking the cases and they were solving them way more efficient, way faster, and way more relevant than anyone in a laboratory, anyone in a closed setting of solving problems for others. So if you know that your students spend 20% of their time, no, 40% of their time being conscious and awake behind a screen, what do you want to teach them? And it's definitely not, you shouldn't do it.
If it's what?
It's not, you should not do it. You don't want to teach your students they shouldn't do it because they don't care what you say. They won't stop doing it, right? That has failed.
Yeah.
So
I definitely, I agree with all of that. I mean, I run a program that's called Media Arts Cultures. And so it's a master's program with international people that, you know, that are very specific into media, and they're very specific into cultural, working with cultural data, working with cultural artifacts and things like this. And so, so it's all good. And I think that part of it is also being able to give them a little bit of trust and faith in the future that they are the ones that need to be making what kind of job is going to be coming up in the future. They need to be reaching out to the places that they're most interested in. But we can talk about this some more. I just wanted to sort of speak out and say that I'm not coming from the side of the business per se, but then where people are going to be going into the world of work later.
And I've shared, by the way, I've shared the link to the slide share in the chat.
Yeah, I already downloaded it. Thank you.
Download the PDF.
Yeah, great. I look forward to the next one.
Good. Me too. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.